Website at lendwithben.com.
Bringing you the best local talk radio shows, Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM, WFBT, Carolina Beach.
The information on this program is intended to share the experiences others have had in battling addiction and to let you know there is hope to recover, no matter how bad things may seem. Please do not change any program you are on, especially if under medical supervision, without the approval of your doctor, counselor, or other professional treatment.
And good evening and welcome to Recovering Hope. My name is Marcley. A pleasure to be with you once again on this lovely Wednesday evening here in the Port City. Hope that you're doing well. The name of the program, like I said, is Recovering Hope. We've done approximately 6 months worth of programs, maybe 1 or 2 extra weeks in there, and I've had the privilege to speak with and learn from dozens of people from all parts of our country. And I really have. I've learned so much and spoken to some wonderful people, some of whom, actually many of whom, have lost loved ones due to this drug pandemic. And as we've spoken, a lot about, particularly the last 6 weeks, it seems like, it's been mostly revolving around the issue of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a very, very dangerous drug, and I'm going to get into some of the facts about that without being overly redundant a little bit later in the program. But first, I just want to remind folks that coming up this evening, we're going to speak with what I think is a very special guest. His name is John Hanrahan. He's the author of a book, Wrestling with Angels. And you may have guessed it, John, and some of you know him. Quite a few people I've spoken to do know John. He's gold medal wrestler. In the course of his wrestling career, he became a world-renowned model. All the top modeling agencies all over the world. Versace is the only name that I remember, but that's a pretty memorable one. And in the course of that, he became a personal trainer, and John doesn't do things in a small way. He has trained, so many of the rich and famous and powerful, and because they sought him out. He was the best. And an interesting story, and sadly, as we know, drug addiction does not know any boundaries of any kind. John did become addicted to cocaine in his journey of quite an impressive life. And we're going to hear about some of that, how he overcame it. And I've spoken to John off the air once or twice. Seems like a great guy, and I'm really excited about this interview, and I hope that you can stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up at about 6:15. A shout out to my friend Derek once again. Derek, hello to you and your buddies there. I hope everything is going well, and you got everything that you need. If you listen to this program, you might listen to Mark Benson. I think it was 2 Saturdays ago, Mark came up with some facts about some deaths in Ohio. In 84 hours, there were 17 overdose deaths. Now, there's an important distinction between an overdose and a poisoning, and that's part of the new paradigm of fentanyl. Someone dies of fentanyl. It could be an overdose. It could be somebody that has a history of drug addiction, and they may have done too much. They may have wanted the heroin with fentanyl, but that new paradigm I speak of is pills and other drugs that are being tainted with fentanyl. But I didn't get the stats from Mark, but 17 deaths in 84 hours in Ohio. We'll touch on the harbor. The harbor, we've been speaking about that the last few weeks. To the very best of my knowledge, the harbor has closed. It's very sad. The harbor was the only state-funded detox in the region. And within one day, I think last Thursday or Friday, I got 2 calls, one from a gentleman, one from a young lady that both needed detox. I called my friend Patrick Hall, who knows a lot about recovery himself, and he recommended that they call the mobile crisis line. I called the mobile crisis line earlier today just to see how they're handling these things. And the mobile crisis line will help you. They won't necessarily, put you in a detox situation, but they will assess the situation. Somebody will come out, help you. And the number for the mobile crisis line is 866-437-1821. 866-437-1821 for the mobile crisis line. I think the next closest detox facility, to my knowledge, is the Walter B. Jones facility in Greenville. Okay, so a little bit on the fentanyl, and a term that has been coined are the fentanyls. The paradigm shift into a complexity of a different issue of drug-related deaths. Not all are addicts. Many now are young teens experimenting, trying to drug with friends, but due to cross-contamination and dealing of fentanyl, which is a cheaper way to get high, but deadly and unregulated, that one experimentation can end in death. And for many it has. And this is something I learned listening to another podcast that somebody had done. Fentanyl is absorbed through the skin also, and it can be deadly even to touch it. And I was thinking about, someone going through someone's drawer, whatever the reason is. Maybe they're looking to see if their loved one, whoever it is doing drugs. And if there is some of this powder in there, touching it can kill you. Now, that might seem extreme. It's probably a rare situation, but I'm telling you, this stuff is horrible. It's deadly, and it's got to go. Fentanyl is 100 times stronger than heroin, and carfentanil is 10 times stronger than that. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke with a gentleman by the name of Ed Kobelis. Ed had neck surgery some years ago. He was on Percocet, I believe, if I got his numbers correct, 12 to 18 months to deal with the pain prior to surgery. And after surgery, he went cold turkey to get off of it. It took him, I think he said, 7 to 8 days. 72 hours of no sleep. It was horrible. 4 to 5 years later, he was still thinking about how good it felt when he was taking them. And that memory is, I believe, what causes some people to relapse and go back to what they had been doing. And it's unfortunate that, I think maybe our memories, work the way that we want them to, of course. My father used to tell me I had a convenient memory. But, they remember the feel good from the drug, from the medication, but they might not remember or want to remember the pain and the misery and the suffering that they had to go through as those drugs were wearing off. And that is something that's very critical. And, I neglected to give out any information here as far as contacting me. If we could be of any assistance, please, the easiest way to get in touch with me, to watch or listen to podcasts of this program, the website is recoveringhope.org. And I spoke to Joe Catanacci this morning on the air, and I thanked him and TK. I mean, everybody here that works to help produce this program, because it's helping get this information out to people. If we have helped one person for however long this program goes in their struggle with addiction, possibly even to save a life, boy, that would be wonderful to know. So I thank the Big Talker for the opportunity to be here to share this information with you, and for all those who have spent, decades, some of them decades of time, working to help save people's lives, to help. They can't undo the loss that they have had if that's what they experienced, but they are working very, very hard to make sure that nobody else experiences that loss, and I really do so very much appreciate that. So, if you need to call me, the number is 910-231-6020. That's my mobile. Call me anytime. just not on Wednesdays between 6 and 7 because it'll go right to voicemail. I want to share a little bit about, one of the testimonies of one of the gentlemen that had spent a little over a year at Prodigal Recovery. And that's the other thing that I do. I don't talk about it on every show, but I run a recovery residence for men called Prodigal Recovery. My son and I started this 3 years ago, September. So we're shortly approaching our 4th anniversary. And we've had the pleasure to see and experience a lot of people who have struggled with addiction, just trying to get their life back on track. And I'm not going to pretend that it all ends well, but last time I checked, there was approximately a little over 30% of the men that moved out and went on and are still doing well today. And one of them, his name is Chris, and we'll just use his first name. It's not my son. I speak of my son periodically on the program, but this is a really somebody I've become close to. And I'm just going to read a short paragraph about his struggle and his recovery. He said, I arrived at Prodigal Recovery in the fall of 2017. After coming to the conclusion I could no longer carry on with my addiction to alcohol. My life was a mess. I'd been drinking a half a gallon of vodka a day for 10 years and came to the realization that I needed help. Luckily, the help came in various forms, and Prodigal Recovery was one of them. When you lean on something for so long, drugs and alcohol, the house gave me guidance on how to live without them. Without structure and a helping hand, I'm not sure I would be here. I'm not sure I would be where I am today. Today, I'm over 2 years sober and doing things I would have never imagined. Over 2 years ago, I couldn't even sign my name on a piece of paper because my shaking was so bad. Now I'm the head chef of a successful restaurant and ready for more. I spent a little over a year living at Prodigal, and the fellowship and guidance I received there was the perfect place for me to start my new journey. Never thought I could feel this free. And I'm not just saying, because he was at Prodigal Recovery. There's a lot of good recovery homes, within the listening area of downtown Wilmington where we're at and all over the country. You got to find one that has good structure, zero tolerance for drug or alcohol use. And our next guest will tell you that that was not his experience with one of his children. So we want to thank Chris, and I'd like to mention the restaurant that he's working at now, but I'll let him tell you that perhaps in an interview that we do coming up. But we're going to take our first break here, folks, and when we come back, we're going to get John Hanrahan on the line. Don't go away. When it's time to get something done, and you've done your due diligence to find the best vendor, it's time to say, just do it. Well, there are a few things we need to do from time to time, and that is to move. Whether it's moving that overstuffed garage to climate-controlled storage or moving across the nation, the company to choose is Just Move It Moving and Storage. Stetson Strickland, owner and founder of Just Move It, takes pride in his work and is hands-on with every move and offers full 100% carte blanche service where you pack and they carry. Junk removal, site cleanups, if it involves moving things, this is your one-stop company. They also give back to the community. Unwanted furniture goes into storage, and every month they donate it to those in need in the community. So, if you're ready to make that move or just get a quote, Just Move It can be reached at 910-795-7658 or on the web at movingcompanywilmingtonnc.com. Just call them. Chris Baines and his team at Coldwell Banker Seacoast Advantage have been helping folks buy and sell homes and land in the area for over 20 years. With the support of a team, their clients enjoy the highest levels of success, communication, and protection. The sellers will have their properties exposed to the most people to ensure the highest sales price. The marketing they use is designed to thoroughly expose the property with virtual walkthroughs and aerial drone shots. All of this is done for maximum exposure, but to also reduce the in-person traffic in these times of COVID. Home purchasers will have an attentive agent that focuses on their needs and helps locate properties quickly to avoid missing out as we are in such a hot market right now. Additionally, they represent buyers that decide to purchase new construction as the on-site agents represent the builder. Chris Baines and his team know how to listen and, just as importantly, know how to negotiate for the best interests of their clients. With a consultative approach, you can be sure they will look out for the best interests of their clients, or why the vast majority of their business comes from past clients and their referrals. Check out their reviews on Zillow, Google, and Facebook. You can reach their team at 910-333-2300 or check out their website at wilmingtonarearealestate.com. And good evening. Welcome back to Recovering Hope. My name is Marcley. Thank you for tuning in this evening. And as I mentioned earlier, if we could be of any assistance, you can reach us at recoveringhope.org. And John, do we have you on the line, sir?
Yeah, Mark, this is John. It's great to be on.
Man, thank you. I really appreciate you taking some time here tonight, John. How are things in Georgia?
Everything's good over here. It's my pleasure. I'm excited to share my story with you and your audience, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. And one of the first questions I have to ask you, I brought you a book because I had a couple of notes in there that I thankfully had the time to read. Explain to me the cover, if you would.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the cover, it's an interesting picture. It was actually a Swatch ad. A female model. I worked for years as a top international model. This was an ad campaign for Swatch watches, those watches that were big in the mid '80s. And the female model, the photographer had her put her hand over my head and over my face. Mm-hmm. That was the shot they used. You never know which shot they're going to use, but that's the one. That's the one.
It took me a while to figure out it was a woman's hand, and I saw the two watches. I figured all the traveling you do, this way you had time zones, for a couple of different countries or cities.
It's interesting because that was kind of a segment of my life that happened after I was discovered wrestling for Penn State University on a televised match. I kind of got whisked into the world of fashion and became a high fashion model and traveled the world and worked all the major markets, Milan, Paris, Zurich, Tokyo, New York, and all that. Yeah,
there wasn't a whole lot of boredom in your life, I don't think.
Who would ever thought an all-American wrestler that had been stitched up 8 different places just in his face would end up on the cover of glossy fashion magazines. But I was.
Wow. Well, John, give us if you would, a little more background on yourself and how this all came about, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was one of the top wrestlers coming out of high school, and I lived and breathed sports growing up as a kid. Grew up in Northern Virginia, the D.C. area, and chose wrestling later in high school because I knew that was the one that was going to allow me to work my own way through college. And sure enough, I earned a full scholarship to Penn State Wrestling. Penn State, which is one of the major wrestling powers in the country. Worked really hard at that as a student athlete and becoming a 2-time NCAA All-American, and finished my career as the winningest wrestler in Penn State history, the first one to win over 100 matches. And as I mentioned, during that time I was discovered and took the fashion route while I was still trying for the Olympics in '84. I was being sponsored by the New York Athletic Club and working with the illustrious Ford model agency. And my life at that time kind of went on 2 parallel tracks, and didn't make the Olympic team, got beat out by Dave Schultz, who you may have heard that name. He was the Olympic gold medalist who the movie Foxcatcher was depicted about. He was later murdered by John DuPont, and that was a tragic story. That's part of my story because I went down to train with him a few weeks before that tragic ending. But anyways, when I say my life took 2 parallel tracks, once I didn't make the Olympic team, substance abuse crept in big time into my life, and my story really is a cautionary tale about my near-death experience at age 25. I was able to come back in life. I stood in front of my Creator and was given the opportunity to return to life. And in return, I vowed to share my pain and suffering somehow. I didn't know if it was going to be a book or just talking about it. But I share that in my story, Wrestling with Angels, which is a story of that pain and suffering, but it's also an ultimate story of redemption.
Right.
You know, I really got the courage to share my story after my son Colin had become a victim of the opioid epidemic.
Right.
He actually broke his leg during a high school wrestling event. And you know, you would have thought that I would have been able to see all the red flags and the telltale signs. So that's why it's also a cautionary story, because I myself should have been able to realize it, but it wasn't almost until it was too late that we realized what he was going through. And by the grace of God, he is still with us today, and he's thriving. He's 8 years clean and just graduated from film school in London. So he wanted to share his part of the story too, which has really made me proud, because you know, he's really inspiring a lot of young adults, and that scourge and that epidemic has really even skyrocketed this past year. I think we've lost 87,000 souls to fentanyl and opioids, and so together we share our story, and in hopes of giving other families and suffering people with loved ones suffering hope, because it's really just a human tragedy that our nation is suffering through. And my wife and I have started a nonprofit, and the book proceeds go to help our nonprofit, recoveryangel.org, where we give individuals suffering some direction and some hope, and try to get them steps towards recovery.
Yeah, I went to that site, and give me a little more information about what you do there, John. You and your wife are involved in that?
Yeah, my wife Kirsten's really been one of the angels. She's really helped others navigate through the maze of treatment options and the dead ends of not being able to get help. And really, we just help that first line of communication. We have 2 licensed addiction therapists that volunteer their initial time to help those. After some of my national media events, we really had a big uptick in people seeking help, and it's been real rewarding to help them get the first steps towards treatment. And then, you know, I think I told you we run a recovery house for men, and I mentioned before you came on that it's certainly not all successes, but we have seen a lot of men, you know, turning their life around, and I think it's about, you know, 1 out of 3 that move on to do, you know, better things. And you know, when you're speaking about your wife there, what really struck a nerve with me is how I can relate to the numbness that you and your wife felt when trying to deal with your son's addiction. How you felt so isolated, and you couldn't even find the words to pray together. I mean, my gosh, it almost brought tears to my eyes when I read that in your book. And there was one page in your book, and I'll maybe find it if we take our first break, but you could cross out your son's name and put in my son's name, and how I think it was when what kept him going, this is it, what kept your son going was knowing that he could come back to you. And I think that's what kept my son going too, because as much as we butted heads and had our issues, he knew I was in his corner. And I think your son knew that too. You know, Mark, it's interesting that you touched on that, because that is a major point. And that is such a tough quandary for people to realize, because you know, many of the professionals would have told us that he should have been put out on the streets by then. But you got to know your loved one. You got to know if they can survive on the street, or if that tough love is going to help them, or if that's, or if just going a little bit further with them is going to be that mile that helps to save them.
Right.
And for him, it was.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Actually, my son was on the street for quite a while. I mean, he was back and forth, in and out. he'd come home sometimes in just shorts. That's it, and curl up on our couch out on our porch, and I'd look out the window and see him there. And Chris, you want to go back up? Go upstairs to your bed. All right, Dad, thank you. And then you think, okay, I just showed him this great love. It's going to be over. Well, sadly, that happened more than once, and I hope I'm not embarrassing my son if he's listening. But he's okay with sharing this because he knows the hope that is real because he's a living example. I don't know if I told you that now he runs a very successful tree pruning business for the past several years. Even with a tragic accident of almost losing his foot, it'll be 2 years next month. A log fell off his dump truck and crushed his foot, and he ended up losing a few toes, reconstructed. It blew out like a tomato. But he wasn't home from the hospital for 3 days, and he's back on the job. He's just unstoppable. And he used to apply that unstoppability in a bad way, but now it's, watch out, world, I'm coming back. And I'm so glad to hear that your son's doing well, too. So he still is over in London.
Oh, no, he's back in Atlanta, and he's
good.
I think he's got some work lined up this summer in a film production, but he's doing very well. And, by the grace of God, he's made it through. And my story, Wrestling with Angel, has been resonating with so many around the country. I get messages every week that are just so heartfelt. And I think sharing our story really has made an impact and really has brought some help to others. Part of my near-death experience message was that even if your loved one was one of the unfortunate ones that have been lost in the wake of this epidemic, don't give up on God. Don't feel like your prayers were not seen by God or answered because it's such a test of faith.
Absolutely.
I, by the grace of God, was able to come back, but I know that my parents and my brothers and sister would have had a lifetime of suffering and blaming themselves maybe and all that. But it's one of the messages that I was kind of, I feel that part of my mission is to share with others that God's love is real and just don't question it and have that deeper faith. And if you can maintain that faith through that loss, you're going to be even stronger and more rewarded somehow for that.
Well, absolutely, John. And you mentioned a very important key word there in sharing that story, which is what we are doing now. And that's the main reason that I'm here. That's why we call the program Recovering Hope, because we know there is hope in recovery. I've spoken to so many people in these past 6 months I've been doing this, and of course, off the air as well. And one story that I often share is a fellow that used to live in New York also, and I think he was in his early 30s. He had been in 29 rehabs, not just a halfway house, not, outpatient service, 29 rehabilitation facilities. How many people do you think said, give up on Kevin? And many probably did, but Kevin didn't give up on Kevin. He has an interesting blog, if you will, on Facebook called the Addict's Diary. Kevin Alter, very interesting young man, and I don't know if I already said this, but now he runs a rehab. Did I just say that? I don't even remember. But it is amazing. So, sharing this information, and it's something that kind of frustrates me because all these programs are archived in podcast form, and they're still on my Facebook page, and I don't even know how long they stay on here. But that's what I would ask somebody like you to do, and you had asked me if this information is accessible, and it will be, for you to share, one more way, to one more group of people, your information. And that would be very much appreciated. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the story, believe it or not, that you told me about Kevin is one that I can really relate to. I've helped somebody through that's gone to 22 treatment centers and sober living homes, and right now that individual is clean and hopeful, and helping that individual actually get help for an underlying condition that might have never been addressed, and that was for a condition of depression. And we finally got him help with that issue.
Yeah,
and,
good.
I think there's things like that that are kind of the precursors that don't get addressed.
That's right.
Until you're able to.
That's right.
To get clean enough to address that.
So many people that have an addiction to drugs. I don't like calling somebody a drug addict. I know, they do themselves, and I read something from another person who's in, a recovery coach, if you will, and she's proud to call herself that. And that might be a good thing, but I don't know. To me, it just is a little uncomfortable. But the underlying problems, like you alluded to there, are some of the things that can make them very sick or die. It might not be the drug itself, but because they haven't gone for a checkup, they haven't gone to look at these other symptoms, they just don't know. And they continue in their drug addiction, perhaps until they die, but it might not have been the drug that killed them. So, yeah, it's multifaceted and kind of but an extremely horrible situation. John, have you got I'm not sure how much time you have here, but we're coming up on a break. You got another 15 minutes or so?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
I'd like to stick with you.
All right,
absolutely.
Very good.
Thanks.
Appreciate it very much, John. And we'll be right back, folks. Don't go away. Besides my involvement in Prodigal recovery, I'm also in the construction business. I say that to say this. When we have tropical storms or hurricanes, the real hard, difficult, expensive, and dangerous work is usually the result of trees falling on homes or other personal property. Hurricane season is not the only time to get prepared for this. As a matter of fact, it's before and after hurricane season that you need to get prepared. My son Chris started his tree business called Climb Pro Expert Tree Care after Hurricane Florence. Chris has all the equipment and manpower to take on even the most challenging jobs. With over 20 years of combined experience, Climb Pro LLC can safely remove any unwanted hazardous trees from your property. They also offer tree pruning, elevation, deadwood removal, and other expert tree care services. Don't wait until you have a tree emergency. Visit climbpro.com, that's climb with a K. Check them out on Facebook or call Chris Marcley at 910-540-5249. Mention this ad for a 10% discount. When it's time to get something done, and you've done your due diligence to find the best vendor, it's time to say, just do it. Well, there are a few things we need to do from time to time, and that is to move. Whether it's moving that overstuffed garage to climate-controlled storage or moving across the nation, the company to choose is Just Move It Moving and Storage. Stetson Strickland, owner and founder of Just Move It, takes pride in his work and is hands-on with every move and offers full 100% carte blanche service, or you pack and they carry. Junk removal, site cleanups, if it involves moving things, this is your one-stop company. They also give back to the community. Unwanted furniture goes into storage, and every month they donate it to those in need in the community. So, if you're ready to make that move or just get a quote, Just Move It can be reached at 910-795-7658 or on the web at movingcompanywilmingtonnc.com. Just call them. And welcome back to Recovering Hope. My name is Mark Marcley, and on the phone with us is John Hanrahan, author of Wrestling with Angels. Still there, John?
Yeah, Mark, I'm still here.
Okay, good.
I'm with you.
Good. I don't know, you probably get this question a lot. How long ago was it that you had your near-death experience? You said you were 25, but I don't know how old you are now.
It was 1985.
Oh, wow.
It was in October 1985, and
would you mind sharing that story with us? I mean, I saw it in the book, but
well, it's really tough to share it. My book is really kind of a life review, because when you actually die and your soul pulls out of your body and you have that last tick of your heartbeat,
wow,
that's it, and then you're whisked away to another dimension, another place. And I kind of went through a wrestling match with a couple mighty angels that pulled my soul out of my body after a second cocaine injection that was administered by a physician who lived across the hall from me in New York City.
Right.
It was it was at a time when my family had tried to do an intervention with me back in D.C. about a week earlier when I was home for a visit, and and it was a time. And it was a time where I knew I was needed help. I was ready to surrender. I had just walked home from Studio 54, which was a few blocks away from my Midtown apartment, and I'd made a vow that the next morning I was going to go for help. And that night, that doctor was in the hallway, and I ran into him, and I wanted to get some help from him, knowing he was a physician, and turned out he was also an addict himself. And he was a drug user, and he was an IV drug user, and so it was that overdose that put me to my end. My soul pulled out of my body. I went to the place that we all yearn to be, the place where you're only filled with truth and love, and it was amazing to be embraced by the Lord and to be understood and to actually see the prayers of my mother and father and my brothers and sisters. I was shown those prayers as solid objects, and I wasn't able to talk to the Lord at first, but then words began to flow out of me haltingly, and I asked that my parents and brothers and sisters may not have to suffer for the rest of their lives, and that was when the Lord allowed me to return, and that's when I began my life anew back then in 1985. And I vowed, when I came back to life that morning, I felt closer to every human being in this universe, on this earth. I felt the connection of all of our souls, and what I witnessed, I was shown that the Lord's truth and small voices in all of us, and we can either clutter it up and snuff it out in this realm, or we can begin to heighten it and reflect and share that love better with others. And so it's been my quest to share that love, and part of sharing that love is for me to share the raw, unadulterated truth of my story. And so my book, I'm a successful athlete, and I've done a lot of things. I've been a professional trainer for Hollywood clients and sports celebrities, and been an international model, appeared in campaigns. But my book is not a vanity expose as a typical athlete would publish their memoirs. So it's a raw and real story, and that's why it's touching so many people and touching the hearts of so many people.
Yeah, it is. And the part of the story that was, well, so much of it was intriguing and interesting, but you spoke to this doctor because you wanted to get help, and you were pretty much asking him for help, and I think he was like, okay, well, come on over and we'll talk, and then he pulls out, you had never done intravenous drugs before, right?
I had done it once. I wasn't an angel. I'd grown up and had become a drug user even through high school, and it was I hid it through my life.
Right.
My fellow athletes and teammates never knew, but so. And
it's amazing. You went into so many matches after an all-nighter, so many different things. We went for your Versace shoot, I think, after staying out all night, and you still got the kick, as they say.
That's right. I was able to kind of, in my mind, to go to the edge on my tippy toes and return to do things that a normal person wouldn't be able to do. They'd be lay in bed for 3 days. But I think, so I thought occurred to me today, I think God made my story just interesting enough so that I could really share with others and make it kind of interesting enough for them to read and to be glued and stuck to it, because so many tell me when they start turning the pages, they can't stop.
Yeah. I was actually disappointed when I got to the end. I was, especially those last couple of chapters, because of what I experienced in my own family and what you experienced with your son. And again, how you and your wife, that numbness, that, when my wife and I would pray, I think there were times where we actually said, okay, God, it's us again. What's going on. Can you please help us? But we, like yourselves, we never gave up hope. We never gave up our faith in God. I'm going to tell you, it wasn't always easy. I knew he has a plan, but I jokingly say, an architect, making plans, but he had a plan, and I truly believe that part of that plan was giving me the education that I got. I didn't want it. I got it. The education my son got, and he's used it. He has helped countless other men and women struggling with addiction. He's got a very unique way about him in walking the walk, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, and that's really what makes the difference. But just for a moment, getting back to your near-death experience, I think when you were resuscitated, you said to this doctor, he didn't believe what had happened to you, and I think you had told him that you could see him. I don't know if he was flushing his drugs or walking around his place. Did he ever come to believe you about what had happened?
No, he never did, and I didn't dwell on it.
Yeah.
I just kind of moved on because the one thing I found when I came back, it was hard. It was hard to convey my experience in words because the words would always fall short. That's why it took me 5 years really to put this story, and my own son gave me the courage to really share my story.
Right. Yeah, there wasn't many. I think your friend Sandy. Yeah. Right, was someone that you felt you could.
Sandy Gallen, one of my top Hollywood clients, he could relate because, he had been through kind of a life-altering moment with cancer, and he was real open-minded. But it was tough, and really, I actually needed to kind of expel some of the demons of what I had left behind on the wrestling mat. So it helped that I had kind of gone back at age 36 and made a try at the 1996 Olympic trials and beat some young NCAA All-Americans en route. Fell short, but got in tremendous shape and kind of earned the respect again from my fellow wrestlers and a whole younger generation of wrestlers. And then finally won the Veteran World Wrestling Championships in 2016. So that was kind of neat, finally getting that on the world stage on top of that podium.
That's incredible. That's only 5 years ago.
And then, so coming up this summer, I have the opportunity to work with the current Olympic wrestling team as they prepare to do battle in Tokyo, because we're going to be hosting the Olympic training camp here in Atlanta, and I've been named as the strength and conditioning coach. And I'm excited to work with those young and just amazing athletes.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure that they know. I have a couple of old high school buddies that were into wrestling. My thing was martial arts, but they were all wrestlers. And, you can mess around, wrestle, and, you pin somebody to stop. With martial arts, you can't really do that. So, but we had a lot of fun doing it, and a couple of them definitely recognized your name, and they knew you. And I think they're probably listening right now.
That's neat.
Yeah, that really
is. That's neat. Mark, part of my mission is really to dispel the shame that addiction survivors suffer, and I think I really want to remind them, anyone that comes to the other side of that and survives it can be such an inspiration. They should be recognized and should be proud as a cancer survivor beating cancer. And,
that's right.
Because there's so many that are left in the wake, and like I said, that God has a plan for them. Don't give up on God, because it's a real test for those loved ones, and but don't give up your faith.
That's right.
And the other thing is that you mentioned, with so many people going to treatment, and then families investing their hard-earned money, but the one thing going in that they really need to realize, that relapse is so often a part of that recovery, and just to prepare themselves to go the long road, and just and just don't take it out on each other. You mentioned my wife and I. It's a testament to our give and take relationship that we've stood the test of time. And my wife is truly an angel that has helped so many other addicts and helped young adults kind of find their way.
Yeah, and, that's good. It was interesting how
she
remembered.
There's a lot of blame involved.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting how she remembered your phone number. I forget what the acronym was for the phone number, but you were a real gentleman when you weren't pursuing her as you thought you should, and she was complaining about her or this other man in her life, and, you could have put him down, but you were cool.
That's right.
That was nice story.
That's right.
Are you still training?
Thank you so much. Yes, my company's privatetraining.com, and I'm training myself, and I train my clients. I have a wellness business, and I train executives, and I also have developed a curriculum for young adults. I teach midday personal fitness to high school students at a local private school, and I've been coaching wrestling for years, and so I keep my hand in all that stuff. But one of the formulas that I like to stress with others is the four F words: faith, family, fellowship, and fitness. That's the formula that I want to convey and exude to others as part of a foundation for recovery. Faith, family, fellowship, and fitness. For myself, I probably convey this in the book, that the sport of wrestling for myself is a form of martial arts. It's the oldest sport known to man, and it gave me a sense of grounding and a fellowship to really get back in on the mats, and it's a constant barometer that I still go on the mats and test myself. And I found that for myself, and others need to find things fitness-related, spiritual-related, and fellowship-related. And that's a formula that I try to devise when I train other clients and devise group fitness programs.
Okay. I noticed something on give me the website for the training again, John.
Privatetraining.com.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and there's a subject called stretching. And that is something that this old man at 65 needs to do. I had gone back to a martial arts school a couple of years ago, and, I didn't do it, to be a badass. I did it because I really wanted the flexibility, the stretching and all that stuff. But they didn't stretch us out before we worked out. And you can't, especially the kicks. I mean, my knees were bothering me, so I stopped going. So this stretching part of your website, tell me a little bit about that.
I'm actually a certified flexibility therapist. You probably didn't know there was such a thing.
No, I didn't.
Different styles of stretching. Yeah, I do. I do hands-on stretching with my private clients. I put them on a treatment table, and I stretch them head to toe, and various forms: active, isolated stretching, static stretching, and when I do that, I try to impart spiritually. I've heard of people laying on hands. I pray for my clients. I pray for the best for them, and I feel that energy that I was shown from God, that I was shown to reflect that to others. So but that's a major component in my fitness program. It's one of the 4 foundations. That flexibility component is important, and flexibility, muscular strength, cardiovascular, and nutrition are the 4 pillars that I try to oversee in an individual's fitness program. But you got to get your sensei doing the stretch routine.
I know.
After a good warm up.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, their warm up was playing dodgeball, and I thought that was a little odd at first, but then I realized, okay, the black belts.
No, that is.
Yeah, they were very good at dodging. Or catching even
dodgeball.
2 balls, yeah.
It's funny you say that, because that was a staple for the Penn State wrestling room.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the boys, they have a dynasty program. They've won 8 of the last 10 national titles. But going back to even when I was there, you get in that room at 4 p.m, and the last thing you want, your body was sore from the day before. But the best warm up, we'd have a pickup game of dodgeball against each other, and it got us moving.
Yeah,
it got us moving.
It does.
They still do that to this day. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's funny. Yeah. Well, that's all well and good, but when you're warmed up, then you go, into the other side of the dojo, and they should have put us through some stretches, but they didn't, and so that's one reason that I stopped. Tell me a little bit about when we spoke on the phone. Actually, we spoke on Good Friday, and you told me about a story about your son on Good Friday. You want to share that one with us, John?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it was a Good Friday about 9 years ago that we had left our son in California at a sober living home, and we had a feeling he wasn't doing well, and we were worried about him, of course. And on Good Friday, we got the call that he wanted to come back home and save his life. And so,
wow.
So our hearts were full, but it was a long journey for him to come back because he was still using. He got through John Wayne Airport, took his last shot of heroin in the airport bathroom, and had to make 2 other layovers to get back on that flight because it was a 3-legged flight. We picked him up at the airport. He was a yellow skeleton of himself because he had been jaundiced. He'd gotten infected with hepatitis C. And really, the doctors had told us to plan his funeral because if the heroin wasn't going to kill him, his liver enzymes were shutting down.
Wow.
And,
wow.
And he arrived back on Easter Sunday after we got him that flight on Good Friday. And that was, we sent him to one more treatment center after that, and that was the one that took for him. For some reason, he got it after that. And he's been an inspiration to other young adults.
And that's why you don't give up.
Yeah, and the message on Good Friday wasn't lost on us. And to have our son back on Easter.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that leads me to...
I cherish that time.
When you said you went to this sober living facility, recovery residence, whatever you want to call it, and the young man who answered the door was jaundiced because of Hep C, but yet you were assured everything would be good, and come to learn that pretty much everybody was getting high. Maybe you can give some advice onto selecting a good recovery residence for people, because I know that you're involved in that to some degree.
Yeah, it's really tough. You've got to. You've really got to do your homework, and you've got to do the ratings. And we had spoken with the manager and actually knew who the owner was and all that, and it seemed all in the up and up. And but along the way, you really learn to use your gut instinct, and you can't just check reviews because there's so many addicts that don't want to be there that'll end up.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a couple of reviews like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll just give negative reviews to really spite the place, and they just really want to get back to using. So you really got to read between the lines, and we are lucky because we found angels in the recovery industry. John Clark is one of them that we really respect.
That's right. Yeah, John's great.
Yeah. And there's a few others that we really respect. And so we've been lucky enough, from coast to coast to find individuals that we can get a quick call to, and they'll have something to say about a place. But when you're first starting out, you're just at the mercy of Google.
Right. And
that was a tough situation.
Yeah, and now, does your son still have Hep C?
No. They came out with a miraculous drug later that year, and it was the most expensive drug at the time. It was like $30,000 a month for a month for a dose.
Wow!
Can you believe that?
I think I've heard of that.
And Harmony. And I think but by the grace of God, somehow, and we never have a lot of our insurance covering things, but somehow, some way, our insurance covered it. I think if we were praying that it would, and we got the okay with our insurance to cover it, because that was a game changer, and that really was just kind of a godsend.
Yeah, well, my son was diagnosed with Hep C, and I think it was while he was in a treatment center. I think they said now he has it, but after he got more serious about his recovery, I'm not sure exactly the time frame. My wife can tell you all this stuff very accurately, but we just talked about it the other day because I think I mentioned about your son to her, and it was again some months, maybe even a year later, he had a clean slate. He didn't take that drug.
Wow. And
was it all prayer? I don't know, but the diagnosis was absolute. He had Hep C, but he absolutely does not now. So again, by the grace of God, once again, yes, sir. Have you heard of, and I just made this note and just took a look at it, getting back to the recovery residences. Have you heard of an organization called NAR, National Association of Recovery Residences?
No. Oh, yes, I have. It's an accreditation group, right?
Yes, and I'm in the process of applying for that. Actually, the woman who came up to our home and sat down with me is in Georgia. It's the GAR, Georgia Association of Recovery Residents. It's an offshoot of the national, and she's working on the paperwork. We've checked all the boxes. It's a matter of putting it through. But that is something that, for people listening, and also for yourself, if you're making references to other people, in Wilmington, there are only 2 other recovery businesses that have that certification, and there's about at least 60 within a relatively small area. And we will be the 3rd, at Prodigal Recovery. And that's something that people might want to see if they have that certification. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but now I am accountable to someone else, not just, my son and I, calling the shots. It's a relatively simple thing. I don't know what it is in other states, but you don't need a license. It's a relatively simple thing to open up a home. The hardest part is finding a home because the zoning regulations require you to be a half mile or more from the next closest recovery residence. And for the most part, it's all taken up in this area, unless it's zoned commercial, and the residence that we have is zoned commercial. That's how we were able to open that up. So that's something that might help some folks. John, any closing remarks? And I so very much appreciate your taking your time from your family and at dinner time. And
I think if you're an adult and you have children and you did have a substance abuse problem, maybe one that you've kind of kept a secret, you may want to just share that with your young kids at a certain age, because leave the ball in their hands, because if you don't, and then they come to you and they're suffering with the substance abuse addiction, you may have wished that you would have at least put it on them to know that they're susceptible to it more than some others. So don't wait until it's too late. Don't let your pride get in the way.
Very interesting. And, I never did share my story with my sons. I've seen the sun come up many times with those all-nighters, and I didn't want them to know, not because I was ashamed to tell them, but I was afraid they would think of that as a license to do it themselves. Well, I was wrong. And a little after the fact, they know everything that I've done, and some of which will not be broadcast. John, thank you so much again. I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you, Mark.
Love to learn some training techniques from you.
It'd be my pleasure. And just remember, proceeds from my book, WrestlingCoach.com, goes to help our RecoveryAngel.org nonprofit. So excellent. I appreciate you having me on, Mark.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, John. Take care. You. Say hello to your wife for me.
I will. Thank you,
right.
Mark. Get back in that dojo.
All right.
Kicks, okay?
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
You too.
And that was John Hanrahan, Wrestling with Angels. As he said, the proceeds from this book do go to help others that are in recovery. That website is recoveringangel.org. And excited to announce next week we are going to speak with Daniel Baldwin. Daniel Baldwin is a friend of mine, and her name is Barbara Jean. And Barbara Jean sadly lost a son to an overdose. And I learned just recently that there was fentanyl in that last shot that he took after staying 3 years clean. Barbara knew. She grew up with the Baldwin family up in Massapequa, New York, and she reached out to Daniel Baldwin because he's got a recovery story of his own that we will hear. And Daniel helped. PJ is Barbara's son's name, and they compared bucket lists at one point in their get-together, and they both had one thing in common, that was running with the bulls. And so Daniel said, I will take you to run with the bulls. Well, sadly, PJ passed away after 3 years clean. Daniel ran with the bulls, made a film about it. We're going to hear all about it next week. Thank you for tuning in. God bless. We'll see you next week.
Bringing you the best local talk radio shows, Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM, WFBT, Carolina Beach.